Hello, everybody. Welcome. Happy New Year. We're very happy to have you back here for another episode of the Design System Social Club. We're going to start this year strong because we have a lot of great guests today. One of which has like some difficulties, so we'll see if he can join us. But we're going to start with Nathan. Hey, Nathan, how's it going?
Good afternoon or evening. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks. So I don't know, whoever will not know Nathan Curtis at this point, but I'm just going to introduce you properly. So you co-founded 8Shapes with Dan Brown in 2006. Is it the Dan Brown that is the author of the Da Vinci Code? I will everybody, have a wild guess.
No, he's an author, but he didn't write that book. He wrote some other books.
You lead the design system consulting there, obviously, at 8Shapes. I feel like anybody that will be like in the design system world probably have seen at least one of your article on Medium, but you're also the author of Modular Web Design back in 2009. And you helped like over 50 different design systems since 2014. So thanks very much for being with us on the show. We also have Dan. Hey, Dan, how's it going?
Hi there. Hi, everybody.
Dan is a creative director and an advisor. He's founded and he's the CEO of Super Friendly, an agency that can definitely help you also with design system. He co-founded Arcade, which is, if I understood correctly, a tool that helps you with design tokens management. Pretty cool stuff. And he's also the author of Pricing Design. We have more and more guests today. So, hey, Brad, how's it going?
Hey.
So Brad is a design system consultant too. He's the author of Atomic Design. If you didn't read it, I don't know why you're watching this, but okay. And then he's also like a mean bassist, as you can see in the background, and a drummer too. I've seen you play drums, so that's cool. And then finally, we have Katie with us. Hey, Katie, how's it going?
Hi, good.
Katie is, a regular in this show, but she's a hybrid. She works on Primer at GitHub. So Primer is the design system of GitHub. She also created the Cargo design system previously, and she's the co-host of Ladies.ux Boston, and she'll be here with us to grill and ask you questions about, consultancy. And there's a lot of people saying hi there's Gina that is here. Yeah. I think, well, Donna says hi, but like to a lot of people. So I'm just going to show that, but they're here. Cool. Great. So to be honest with you, I feel like, I started this idea of having, this episode on consultancy because I'm myself a design system manager. I think it's the third design system that I have to deal with now. And, like hiring a consultant is, I feel like, something that is more or less on, I think, everybody's mind that is managing a design system at one point. But you just start off things, somewhere and simply. But what is for you like the best stage of a design system? Where do you think that you actually bring the most value when you're doing consultancy? Anybody wants to start with that?
I'll take it if nobody else is going to jump. This is, I imagine, similar to what everybody here talks to clients and prospective clients about. But one of the things that I say a lot in sales meetings or prospective client meeting when I meet a new client is that what we will never do is be as good as they are at their own design system, right? That like, no matter how much time, especially a mature design system, what we don't bring to the table is depth, is like, you're going to be better at your own design system because we're just going to ramp up. What we can bring to the table though is breadth, is to say like, as Nathan kind of said in his intro and Brad as well, like we just work on a lot of design systems. And so what we're able to bring to the table is to say, oh, let us tell you some stories about how this other team tackled something really similar to you. So I think that applies kind of at every stage, is that hopefully as a consultant, you're able to say, oh, let me tell you about how we've done that over here with this set of circumstances, or these variables, or this kind of team. And then hopefully that's something that brings something to the team that you're working with now. So I think that's the beauty of consultancy, is that you can help somebody know what they don't know and help them level up in that way, just through mentorship and coaching and guidance.
Okay.
I really like, Dan, how you're talking about that, because Yeah, we're not going to create magical things. We're going to come in and learn and incrementally help people. And I find myself being brought into situations that are either at completely random times because they just want to get a sense for how they're doing, particularly with some particular topic or challenge that they have. But most of the time it's because they're going through a period of change. And I sometimes call those periods of generational change. Like there might be a first generation, they're starting something from scratch. And almost always we're brought in like too late. They're already too far towards their first generation. And so we're already incrementally constrained by the goals they've already set. Or they're going through some big architectural change, a new design language. They're replatforming to React. They're changing from Sketch to Figma, like everybody in the industry seems to be doing. But they're going through a period of change. And that is when they're most ripe for help because they're willing to change. They have a mindset to change. They have this growth mindset rather than they're fixed and operating in a particular way. And in those cases, it's harder for us to figure out exactly or have the biggest impact that we can.
Cool. Brad, anything to add on that particular subject?
I just want to say that I do create magic, unlike Nathan. And they're not going to come in and create magic. I'm like, that's what I do all day, every day. But I 100% agree with both of them, where it's just, at whatever stage they're in, they're often reaching out because they're trying to do something a bit different. And so it's awesome to kind of ride that wave with them and sort of like in the magic making department, like help really sort of like get them excited and like sort of latch on and help like elevate and accelerate their whatever they're trying to do. And like it's just so much fun. And there's of course challenges that come with it, but it's like that's the fun is like really sort of like helping. The analogy I use is like we see you pushing the boulder up the hill and we're here to sort of come in and like turbo boost that process and get you to a place where you come over the hump of that hill and you get to sort of see all that stuff. So it's like you're saying, it's like that can happen early in the project where it's like we need to like get something off the ground and fast, or it's like we've kind of like hit a wall or we're trying to do this thing different or we're sort of in this sort of quagmire. Can you kind of help come in with like a sense of energy and enthusiasm that can kind of help them move forward? It's a lot of fun.
Cool. Would it make sense then, or is it happen like, do you ever had that experience where somebody is asking you, hey, I want to create a design system. I don't have nothing. Can you help us out? Like, does that happen or?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Here's our giant plate of spaghetti. Please help us. Please help us do something with this. Do you?
That's wow. I'm kind of baffled, but I have zero experience in this kind of stuff.
We could share many stories.
I'm sure we will. Cool. So then, okay, so like somebody like decided that they want to hire you, or like they're interested in having some help. What would you say is like, what can we expect of somebody like helping us from the exterior? Because as I think Nathan, you said, or Dan actually, and I confusing, but yeah, like probably those people know very, very well their situation more than you, and you kind of like, I almost feel like, tell me if I'm wrong, but I almost feel like that's the difference between when you go and see your doctor. Like, yourself very, very well, but the doctor have seen many different people, and then they can actually say, well, yeah, like it's the right combination between those two. It's like giving you the right information so that you understand what's happening, and then you can actually advise on what needs to happen. So, on that vein, what would you say, what can we expect of like a consultant helping us out, and what is out of the question or out of the table in your mind?
I think the doctor analogy is a good one, because I think that there are, doctor design says, I love that. I think, there are good doctors and bad doctors, right? Just like out of the gate. And then there's also good doctors for you and bad doctors for you. Right. And so I think that the same thing applies for consultants, is that there are good ones and there are bad ones, right? Like I've been to bad doctors before, where before I even say anything, they tell me what the problem is. And I'm like, well, but okay, I don't think that this is going to work out here. And then there's some doctors that are, they'll listen and they'll make a diagnosis that I don't agree with. And I'm like, well, that doesn't sound right though. And I'm not saying that they are not good at their jobs or anything like that, but I'm just like, if we don't seem to fit, we don't seem to jive. So I think there's an evaluation period of, are we a good fit? And I think that sometimes we see clients that are like, we say, well, this is what we would do in this situation. And some clients say like, well, we don't want to do that. I'm like, well, great. You should not work with us then, and so a lot of that first period there is about alignment and just saying like, well, in that situation, we would do something like this. This is kind of our diagnosis, like after hearing what you're saying. And then we would tend to do it in this way. And, clients that work with us are ones that say like, yeah, we want someone who would do it in that way. Whereas clients that don't are ones that go like, we just don't agree with that plan. Sometimes that happens up front. Sometimes that happens later on. Sometimes we'll work with clients where after working with them for 6 weeks, and then we recommend, okay, well, here's what the next set of that plan is. They'll go, oh, but we don't want to do that next step either. And it's like, all right. So I think along the way with a good consultant, alignment is important, and continuing to deepen the alignment means that engagement goes on longer and is beneficial to both parties. And then, vice versa. If it doesn't deepen, well, that seems like a good place to part ways.
I think Dan hit it on the head too with you don't want to have a rush to judgment as a consultant. And a lot of our consulting engagements, or almost all the new relationships that I form that last any period of time, start with listening and start with seeing things and understanding things. Because I can just imagine the checklist of stuff that, all right, I want to see all of your design system aspects, your code, your design, your documentation, show me all your stuff. And I want to see all your products that are applying it too. Is it actually being used? And if so, how and how much? And then a listening tour across all the different stakeholders. I want to talk to the team, leaders of the team. I want to talk to the rest of the team. I want to talk to other adopters. I want to talk to some stakeholders or sponsors. And it's only through that you really start to learn and see the breadth of things. And it might take until month 2 or 3 that you're doing the deeper strategic conversations. Even if in month 1, they want you to take a quick pass across their guidelines and give you some quick feedback, which you can do. The other thing is, I don't know, Dan and Brad, if you deal with this, but I have this activity where I say, okay, what do you want to focus on? Process, how we're organized, about how our adoption strategy, or whether we're using tokens correctly, or if we need a doc site and storybook together. And we do an activity where like a whole team votes on what we should focus on. And it's just like votes everywhere. Like everybody just wants to paint the whole thing. And so really getting them to focus on what they need help on most and what they want to hear from you most is a challenge that we try to get past.
Cool.
Yeah. I think that all of that is great. I love sort of starting with listening and Dan, like you're saying, it's like making sure the sort of feedback loop is there and the sort of mutual enthusiasm for sort of keeping things going is big. One thing that it's difficult for me because and you said it really well, where you're like, you don't want to sort of jump to judgment. Boy, oh boy, do I struggle with that. It's just like, they say like 2 sentences that I could already be like, yeah, right. But then it does take a lot more listening, a lot more sort of all of that. But that's typically my problem is I'm like sitting there because we're sitting on all of this, even at like first glance. There you go. I know exactly where we should go, but it sort of like takes some restraint to kind of hold off on sort of unleashing everything until you're done listening. But I think that one of the biggest things for me is kind of like from like a what to expect is like the analogy I've been using is it's like there's the client has a puzzle piece and there's some like sort of there's a chunk missing. There's like a negative space. And like my job is to, and my team's job is to sort of morph itself into the positive form to sort of fit that negative shape. Where it's like, oh, you're missing these aspects. You're missing these disciplines, or you're missing these sort of, sort of, you're missing the reference site. Like Nathan, like what you were saying, it's like, what needs that focus? Where are the holes? And how do we sort of like morph ourselves into the filler to those holes? And that takes the shape of like all sorts of things. Cause sometimes it's just like, we have the design part of our puzzle piece sorted way out, but we don't have any engineers whatsoever. Like this all is fully fleshed out in Figma or in whatever. And like we have all this documentation and Confluence, and like we've done like the design end of things is like so incredibly like buttoned up and mature. And then the engineering sort of aspect of it is just this like, again, sort of plate of spaghetti. So it's like that becomes the negative space that we, especially me as sort of the person who likes to lead the front end of this kind of stuff, or like more like technical part of it, is like, oh, I could totally morph myself into that whole and help you sort of make that parity on the sort of engineering side. So it's like, but sometimes it isn't that at all. And that's like, that's also fun. So it's like, sometimes it's like a tiny little hole where it's like, oh, you need this, this, and this, and we could do that, no problem. All the way to like the client needs to sort of be trusting of that. And Dan, we've certainly been through that before, where they're like, you've done this a bunch of times, like just please give us the thing. And we're like, we could do that too. So sometimes it's just, that's, I'm sure like Dan, Nathan, you're used to this, but you really do, you have to like mold yourself and your teams and stuff to whatever the client needs. And that's fun. That's fun. It keeps things novel.
Good. So then I was wondering, like, typically, how long does this relationship last? Like you were talking about, like probably a month or two of like listening, and but like on average, would you say that this is like a 6-month thing, a 2-year thing? Like how do you experience that relationship?
I mean, generally, I think that a good consultant will know when they are no longer consultative, right? And so they should be there for as long as they're helpful, and then not when they're not, and I think at some point a consultant's job is to get the team, especially when we're talking about design systems. A design system consultant should be helping the team to be able to do things on their own. Like a design system is such an internal tool and has to be ingrained with the grain of an institution, that like if you're reliant on a consultant or even external vendors, like at some point it's got to be the core of your offering, if you're a digital shop. And so I think that at some point you go away. Now, for some clients, they need 3 years of work before you go away. And for some clients, they're like, we just need 3 weeks and then we'll go. And the effort, the level of effort too, scales too. So some need hands-on, like we need you to be in engineering with us and design with us and product with us and helping us make product decisions. And some just need office hours. Like we just want to talk to somebody once a week and just like raise some of our issues. You say, oh, go that way and this way and this way, and here's some samples and some links for you to read, and here's some guidance for you, and that's all they need. So it really varies. I mean, at Super Friendly, we've done 6 weeks engagement with clients, we've done 2 weeks engagement with clients, and we've done 2.5 years worth too. So I think it really varies. It's very different organization to organization because of how the different maturity levels are, with certain organizations. Some organizations have had design systems for 8 years, and are on version 5 of it. And then some, are just starting. And I think, and there are flavors of just starting too. I just had a call with a client yesterday who they opened the call by saying like, well, third time's a charm. So they are starting a new design system, but it's not the first time they've started a new design system. So there's that flavor too, where it is brand new, but it's not like they haven't tried before either. So there's all these different variations that I think necessitate different levels of consultancy.
Yeah, I've had a similar experience to Dan in the sense that duration of engagements vary from 2 weeks or 3 weeks to 2 years. Some of my fondest memories are with an engagement I had at Morningstar, which was 2 years plus long. But it was because it was a great fit, and the arc and my depth of engagement was really deep. And there was clearly a taper once they hired the person that continued to do what I did. And that worked out really well. And others are really short. So when I'm talking to prospective clients, I'll paint that picture of what we can offer in part based on depth and duration of the engagement. I'll say, okay, coaching, what Dan was calling office hours, those are just like one meeting a week for 3 months. Do you want to try that? Or a workshop that takes 3 weeks to set up, or a project that might take 3 months, or you want us to embed with you for like 6 to 12 months. I tend to not want to commit longer than 3 to 6 months because you want to make sure you're protected yourself as a consultant from bad fits. You don't want to be buried at a client for a really long time when it's clearly not working. And we've had a couple where we've probably realized months before it was over that it wasn't working as well as it could. But you have to just see it out at that point. But you have to also be empathetic to them and see it out in the pace that they need to be let go of. And if they wanted to let go in a quicker time, or if they want to let go for a longer time, you want to work with them so that you leave on good terms. You leave with them healthy.
Yeah. That's perfectly said. That last bit is like, you leave with them healthy. Like that's like one of the first things I say is, I'm like, our explicit job is to make ourselves obsolete. And it's like really wonderful to go in, because it's like, oh, and I come from the agency world where it's like, our job is to like trap you in an abusive relationship where you're dependent on me forever, and you keep us on retainer forever and ever and ever. And it's like, I love this kind of work because, yeah, and sometimes it is just like super quick hit. Like you guys are talking like weeks. It's like sometimes it's literally, yeah, an hour. Like, can I jump on a call with you and can you answer these 5 questions? And like, sorted, done. So it's like whatever it requires. And then like sometimes it is like it is like a years long thing. Like I haven't had too many of those. And Dan and our work together, it's like upward of a year, and you're like, ooh, this was kind of feeling long. And I've always kind of been the kind of person they're different mentalities, the sort of like starting versus sustaining kind of thing, right? It's like I like brand new challenges all the time, and then like there's other people that are like a slower burn. And so that's why I like this line of work, is it's like, come in, novel problem, soak it all in, listen, help establish some solutions, point everybody in the right direction, and then say, have fun once they're all operational. So it's like, it's great, but it's like, that's what sort of keeps it fun for me. But that's also what our clients need, is just like, help us do all this, get us going, help us down that road. And like what we talk about, that is like the sort of crossfade where it's like, we're, it might look like 80% us, 20% them at the beginning, but we're modeling things. We're showing them like how to dance. And as they sort of learn, it sort of becomes more of a 50-50 thing. And then like, once they got it, we're like, training wheels are off and we see ourselves out the door. And it's just, I feel it's like such a good setup, and it's very like fulfilling in that respect. Like you don't feel like you're pulling one over or like sort of making a quick buck. It's like, we're here to genuinely like help you out in a lot of cases, like, holy crap, making your lives way less painful than they currently are. And then once you see them sort of like swimming in those new waters here, it's a good feeling. It's a good feeling.
Katie, do you do a lot? I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's kind of interesting to compare this to like being on a team. Because when you join a new team, like maybe you're a consultant joining a new company, but as a person joining a company on the team, it's not the same where you can just come in and be like, oh, this is how I would like to do it. You're doing it wrong. Like, we should do it this way. And then in Dan, when you're talking about like, is it a good fit with your client at that point? If they're like, no, we don't want to do it that way, you can be like, see ya, I'm going to go work with this other client. When you join a team, it doesn't work that way. You have to work as a team and like compromise, and you never want to come in and kind of just be like, this is how I want to do it. We should do it this way. So I guess one question I have for you is, do you find that like by the time teams hire you as a consultant, they are maybe at a point where they're more open to like, please just tell us what to do and we will do it? Or are they more often just like, no, we're still really opinionated and we'll take your advice, but like maybe not do it that way?
I love telling people what to do. That's one of the things that is appealing about being a consultant, is that you get to do that. And I think it's on us as consultants to be ethical about that power, that ability. But we get to do that. And if it's not a fit, or if the client doesn't listen or doesn't care about what you're saying, then you bounce. Then you go, all right, well, on to the next thing, and hopefully there is a next thing. And I think that there is, that's one of the things that a lot of times I bet that, Brad, I know that we've seen this in our work, but Nathan, I bet you see this a lot too, is that a lot of times you'll say things that people on the team have been saying. They just need somebody else to say it. They just need somebody who is being paid rather than, and it's weird because the team is being paid too, but somehow the relationships are different. And so
It's
a lot of
so
times
weird.
it is, because like, so, and that's the job of the consultancy sometimes too, is just to seek out those people that you're like, who are the smart people here who are just not being heard? And then part of our jobs is to amplify them, right? It's just to go like, look, you already have the people on the team who are saying this stuff, you know, and sometimes they just need to hear it coming from a different person. So a lot of that is the politics that come with the consulting.
Shout out to Mike who's on the chat. What's up, Mike? I was Mike's cheerleader for a bit. So yeah, that's how it goes. It's just like you've been fighting the good fight, but it's like you need, again, that like sort of extra muscle to help get you that sort of boulder over the hill. And again, it feels great to do that, because oftentimes some people have been like at it for years. Like you're saying, Katie, it's like, you know, it's like you join a team and like you have an opinion, but it's like you're just, the hierarchy is flat a little bit. So it's like to kind of come in and be like, you know, well, Brad says we should do that. And that's like, it's uncomfortable because it's like a little like ego-y a little sometimes, but it's like, if that helps get that person unstuck so that they could do their best work, it's super. I love throwing that weight around for sure.
I think there's also the flip side, which is you have to build trust with the people that you're consulting with, and you don't necessarily have that when you come into, like Brad. A lot of people have read your book, and so you already have authority when you land. Sometimes when I consult, people have read Medium posts that I've written, and then they sort of know that I have some experience. But other times, people have no idea what Medium.com even is, and so they haven't read my stuff. And so you have to be vulnerable in the sense that as a consultant, you don't have all the answers. And there may be some times when they ask you questions or need help that you can't give, or they ask you questions about topics they know more than you do about. And so you have to be wary and conscious of those things so that you can give them honest advice when you're capable of giving that advice. And Katie, I liked how you created that really strong contrast, which is, do people just come in and expect you to tell them what to do? Or do they have strongly held opinions and they don't want you to do that? Sometimes it's a bit of a mix of both. And so you have to develop that relationship so that you can position the advice informed by good understanding, but then be able to relinquish control, because ultimately they have the control to absorb and take on that advice or not.
Were there any time where you were literally hired to deliver a message that somebody wanted you to deliver from the outside for just politics?
I've joked about that. I'm just going to put that on my website. Just be like, tell me the thing that you need your boss to hear, and I will say it verbatim for this much money.
Yeah, exactly. How much does that cost?
It's almost like, you know, that service cameo, you know, you just hire.
Wow.
Hi, my name is Brad Frost, and I think your OKRs for the quarter should include adopting the design system. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
There was also like a very good question from Henry. I was actually thinking about something similar, but is there ever a temptation to stay working on that system? Was there like any or maybe like proposition from the team where they're like, don't you want to do that long term with us? Okay.
No. That sounds awful. No
I've worked with
literally everyone.
I've worked with a lot of good people, and so sometimes even it only takes a week. I went to work with a company in the UK, and I was leaving on a Friday to go to the airport at Heathrow, and I was like, I'm going to miss these people. I really loved working with these people. And so what I find is that you get so connected to really good people inside when they are good people that it's hard to say goodbye. But that's part of what we do. We're pattern hunters across all these different companies, and the moment that we start to rest too much in one place, or actually if we were to convert to be full-time, which would blow my mind, we lose a lot of our superpowers in that way, because then we don't know what the patterns are and we start to isolate ourselves.
Yeah, cool. Dan, any love story that didn't happen you wish you had?
Really what Nathan said, like I'll plus one that is that like there's a great article that was written by I'm gonna blank on his name now. Shoot, he was the VP of engineering at Slack. He had a blog called Rands and Repose. Michael Lopp, there you go. Michael Lopp, who was at Apple for a long time, and he wrote this blog post called Stables and Volatiles. And it talked about how most companies needs both people who can make things stable and then people who can do new things. I'm definitely a volatile. So I don't have a lot of the temptation. And I think that maybe, I have a hypothesis that maybe most consultants are more volatiles than stables. And that folks that are in-house, I think part of the job of the people who work there is to help stabilize, the things that come from newness. But I definitely like jumping from thing to thing. Once the new thing is done, I'm like, great, what's the next thing? Let's move to the next thing. I will say +1 to what Nathan said is that the thing that makes me want to stay is always the people. I just finished up some work with a client, and like they've got it. We only did, I think, 8 weeks of work with them, but they got it. But I really wanted to work with the people more. And I'm like, so I'm trying to find all these angles to go like, well, what if we stayed on for this or for that? And honestly, they don't need us for that. But I'm like, I just like them a lot. So it would be great to keep working with that person, and so that's the thing that I miss most is like, if only I can get more work time with them and more collaboration time with them. That's the thing that feels like the biggest lost opportunity.
I see.
But the trick is that they end up getting a new job at the new place, and then they go, hey, let's work together again. And you're like,
to any lawyers out there, I don't violate any non-compete or solicitation, just to put that out there.
Well, since we're talking about, like good clients, what makes a great design system client, or maybe on the opposite, what is something that you learn to avoid?
The main thing is really the phrase, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink, is something I feel like, I don't know if you've ever used that, guys, but that's just really, really hard, where it's like you can kind of do your best to sort of point them in the right direction, but a lot of times, or sometimes I should say, it's like that's not a usual case, where it's just like, you really are that dysfunctional as an organization that it's like you just can't. You can't get there even after literally hiring me to point you in this direction. And it's like, so that for me is super frustrating whenever you sort of get those. And it certainly doesn't happen all the time, but it's like, that's what makes like a hard client, where it's like, they're just like so stuck in the grooves, the sort of like dysfunctional grooves are so deep that it's like really hard to, despite your best effort to help them and get them to a better spot and alleviate their pain. It's so deep rooted that it's like kind of beyond you. And it's, again, doesn't happen all the time, but like so it's like the counter to that, in my opinion, is like the people who are, as Nathan, as you said, like early on, it's like these people that are at these kind of like, we need to change. And that's why their sort of reaction to, we need to reach out to these people who know how to get us there. The people that's such a good fit, those puzzle pieces really line up. Like, that's awesome. It's like, I have this vision, we know where we need to go, and we need some outside help to do it. And whenever you're able to kind of Voltron together and do really awesome work together, that's the dream right there.
I think when I'm looking at new clients, I have a range of criteria that sort of flow through my head. When Dan and I started the company, we always wanted to target companies that knew how to do UX already, to a certain extent, that there's an organizational maturity to do the work. And so design systems came along after UX, but the same thing applies. And one of the primary criteria would be a thing like, in the prospective call, is there a director of design and a director of engineering on the call? Like, how much is this a joint effort where they're thinking about their system and the range of multidisciplinary activities that are going to have to happen? Or am I just talking to the director of design? Is there not even engineering involved at all? And so that would be something that comes to mind. We signed a contract years back where, when we landed, we had our sort of onboarding conversation, and then sort of a tech lead was on the call, and we said, okay, well, how do we get our front end developer started? And they looked like they had seen a ghost. And we said, can we even see your GitHub? Or like, how do we get access to your GitHub? And they wouldn't even let us see it. It took about 3 months of back and forth to really help them understand this is part of the value we'll bring. is helping you ensconce the system in code, not just in design. And so you look for those. The other is that I think about mindset, and like Brad said, what is your receptiveness to change? Brad, you've used this metaphor twice today, which is this big boulder you're trying to roll up a hill. And so you've lost the room mindset-wise when one of the leaders in the room, when you're talking about, well, what should we call this design system? It's supposed to be like a fun exercise. And the person nominates Sisyphus. And they're being serious, and it's like the record player goes, whoop, everybody turns. Things aren't lost yet. It becomes a lost effort when everybody turns and nobody says anything. Nobody challenges that person, and that's when you know, oh, this environment, this is maybe not really conducive to us being here.
How about dumpster fire?
Yeah. Dumpster Fire version 2.3 has been released. Dan, we've also been a part of Slack channels for the naming of a system that have gotten very deep into Greek mythology.
Oh boy, that's true.
It's like the most geeky of geeky people sort of commandeer the naming exercise.
I'm curious, just hearing some of your criteria for what you look for in a client. Do you ever work with just like a team of one? Like maybe there isn't even a director of UX, or there isn't really a lot of design involved. Maybe it's just one really ambitious engineer or designer or hybrid tech lead. Maybe I'm speaking from experience. I don't know.
Unless that person's paying like out of pocket.
No. So they've got buy-in.
Man, I need to bust out my wallet.
Basically, the scenario is their boss is like, I don't know what a design system is. We trust you, but you need some support because you're just one person, but we don't speak your language. Like we don't really know how to support you. Do you ever work with one person basically, or like very small teams, or are you mostly working with kind of bigger, more established teams?
I think the maturity of the team is really important. I happen to seek out roles where there's somewhere between stage 3 and 4, which is stage 3 is you've got a centralized team, and stage 4 is you have a team of teams working on your system. I tend to play in the space between those two sizes, but that doesn't mean that we can't help. Like we do all 3 of us do workshops and stuff, and we like to teach folks, but that tends to be the only time when I'm coming into contact with singletons. But that's just the nature of my work.
Singletons.
Well, no, but to be serious, like the stage 2 is when you have a designer
term.
or a developer, and they're doing things that are systematic, that are starting to get reused, and it's starting to grow into something where other people are depending on that person. And that's what I call like stage 2 of 4. And there's definite value and there's definite potential in that. But that's a different kind of problem.
Yeah, we've done a bunch of that at Super Friendly, but I think kind of like Nathan's describing, it's almost different kind of work. So a lot of times a company will hire us and say, hey, we have a person that we're bringing on and eventually they're going to be leading our design system. Can you help get them prepared? So we'll do some coaching and kind of one-on-one coaching with that person. And that's not quite design system work yet. And eventually it'll turn into that, but we'll start to work with that person. I mean, design system work is holistic work that's multidisciplinary and cross-disciplinary. So we're often trying to prepare that person to do that work, to be cross-disciplinary, but it's different than we're working with, a core team that then serves a bunch of other teams there. Like we put different teams on that kind of work. We prepare them differently. We coach differently in those circumstances. So we will work with like a one person or two people that are going to be charged with then like growing that team. So we'll do that, but it's a little bit more rare than like working with larger teams.
It's the puzzle piece again. It's like oh, you have a UX owner of this thing, or like one of my current clients right now. It's like they have the front end person is like the sweetest guy, is the best person. Like it's going to be a great project. We could feel it. We have a good vibe going, but it's like he's like, I have me, and they're like, you're the design system person for now. But it's like, you need the rest of the team to sort of come in, and we need to sort of create this thing. And we've done this a bunch of times. And Nathan, Dan, I'd love to hear more about, Dan, I know a little bit more because I was like, we'll interview people that are like, all right, you need a Brad. Like, we need you to have that Brad clone on your thing, or you need a Katie because like Katie's going on to the next project or whatever. So it's like So very often part of that explicitly making ourselves obsolete is literally like hiring a replacement, but it's like that role is needed. So yeah, so sometimes it is that one or maybe two people that sort of starts off with, but you basically say, here's what it ought to be, here's what it looks like. We will fill that in the interim, but our job is that we're not going to be around forever. So we're going to sort of make sure you have that sort of whole picture painted.
Does it mean that sometimes you actually also help them hire?
Yeah.
Almost all the time.
I love that. That's because my company is two. It's me and my brother. So it's like, I don't get to hire people, but I do get to hire people. Like I get to sort of grill people in a job interview. I freaking love that. That's like one of my favorite things in the world. Because it's like, I'm not even actually hiring them. I'm just kind of, you know what I mean? Like having fun as like an outsider a little bit. So it's like, they probably have like more questions around sort of company fit or whatever, but I'm just like, what are your thoughts on container queries?
You're a matchmaker, Brad. That's what you are.
Yeah, I love it.
I think that's part of the gig too, right? Especially in design system work and consulting, like we're trying to make ourselves obsolete, and not obsolete in that like we go away, obsolete because they don't need that anymore because they have it in-house, like either through knowledge transfer, but ideally because somebody is doing that job and we don't need to do it anymore. Like, because we're expensive, you know, it's going to be cheaper. It's going to be better in the long term to have somebody who works there, you know, to know that stuff, because then they're part of the grain of it. And so I don't think that there's a lot of companies, well, certainly not for me, but I bet there's some companies that are like, their goal is to hire Brad Frost or to hire Nathan Curtis. But for a lot of companies, their goal is not that. It's just to have that expertise, right? That's what they want. And so if they have that expertise from someone else that's not named Nathan Curtis or Brad Frost or Dan Mall or whoever, that's fine. You know, that's good. And so if we can help identify that, I often lead with that as part of the sales pitch to say, like, here's how we're going to be obsolete is starting from day one, we're going to start training you to have somebody take over our position, or we'll help you hire for it. We'll help you write the job descriptions. We'll figure out where to post it. We'll share it with our networks. You know, like all of that kind of stuff becomes a value add too. So I think that's definitely part of it, is like, if we're leaving them with like, we did a thing that you couldn't do, and then we leave and that expertise leaves with us, it's still a problem that we're leaving for them. So we've got to leave it better than we found it. And one way to do that is to go, now you can do this too. Yeah. Bye.
And that's where that like sort of overlap and that like real, we work with like, so the language we always use is like, teach a team to fish. It's like, our job is not to sort of come in and fish for you. It's like, our job is to teach you how to do this. And like, it continues to be like really fulfilling to make that go. And sometimes that means, and Dan, like, we've been a part of this, to be like, oh, like their designers are actually like the best suited to becoming their kind of like front end lead. So we've even like helped people like sort of cross over into a different discipline before, which is like, it's super cool to basically like help be like, how can we situate you for the best success and the least pain? The minimizing pain is like such like an explicit part of my job. Like I absolutely love that aspect of it. It's like, where does it hurt? Like what's frustrating? What do you wish could be better? And our job is to sort of deliver that. And it's very, very fulfilling.
Cool. We're going to switch gears a little bit, because I feel like there's a lot of questions around the same kind of theme moving forward, because I feel like our audience basically is like, oh, this sounds cool. How do I become a consultant? You know, there's like a lot of questions around like, how long have you all been working on design system before going into consultancy? How do you move from like being a singleton to a consultant?
Singleton.
I love that.
I never.
Look what you did, Nathan.
Word.
Look what you did.
I don't use that word normally. Like, that just came out. I don't know what that means.
That's the magic. So anyway, I don't know.
I think,
who wants to start with that?
Well, I've been working on things like design systems as a consultant for about 15 years. So I look back in the years before that, when I was in bigger companies, and I had opportunities to drive work in a small company where I was forming a design system and learning some of those things. But also I worked at a big company that I worked at Sprint and Nextel when they came together and merged. Gosh, that was a long time ago. But, you know, you come into contact with all sorts of different kinds of people, and you come into contact internally, and then you come in contact with vendors like Sapient and Frog and other consultants, and you start to see and experience all those things. And so I learned over time about how all those things work, to the point where I was like, I think I can do that myself. I think that would be a lot of fun. And then the thing that also prepared me with was a ton of contacts, because a lot of the initial projects that I had were from people that had been, Brad or Dan, you were talking about how like agencies just want to like continue billing over time. We call that shrapnel back in the day. Like they would come down, they'd explode for a big project, and then they'd leave shrapnel in the body of the organization and all these marooned agency people. But nevertheless, like you meet a lot of people. And so part of being a good consultant is having a good network and having connections where, like they said, they're going to, through those relationships, invite you into a new place.
I'm not a big Simpsons fan, so I might get this wrong, but there's one episode of The Simpsons where like I think Marge starts teaching piano lessons, and like somebody asked her like, well, I mean, you don't even play the piano really well. Like, how can you teach piano lessons? She's like, I just got to stay one lesson ahead of the kid. And like in some ways, consulting is that, right? It's like if you're one lesson ahead, you can consult. You know, and ideally over time, you are more than one lesson ahead, but you're 5 lessons ahead and 10 lessons ahead and 100 lessons ahead. And like that becomes, you know, more and more value as a consultant. So I think part of it is that. Part of it is just like, if you have worked on 2 design systems, you could help somebody who's only worked on 1 design system, right? And that's valuable to them. If you've worked on 2 design systems, maybe you won't be able to help somebody who's worked on 4 design systems. So, you know, there's some level like that. And then the other part of it is like, you just got to say it, right? You just got to say like, I am consulting now on design systems. You got to put that on a website somewhere, or your Twitter bio or LinkedIn or something. I mean, literally, we've had clients come to us to say like, we were looking for an agency that works on design systems, and then we came to your website and it said it. So we got in contact, because like nobody else's website says it. You know, and like the truth of it is almost every agency out there works on design systems in some respect. But the fact that we say it, you know, that draws attention to it. So, you know, sometimes you just got to declare it and you say like, this is how we're going to do it. And then you grow your client base, like, you know, like the way that Nathan was talking about. You make contacts, you network, you do all that stuff. But one lesson ahead of the kid, and then just saying it and reaching out to people. That's how I started freelancing in the first place. When I started Super Friendly, I made a list of people who you know, did the kind of work that I wanted to work on. And then I sent 300 emails out and said like, I'll take anything you got, you know, and so like, you've got to spread the word about it. Exactly. How to become a consultant. Say you're a consultant.
Say you're a consultant. I like for me, this is like, it happens a fair amount. It's just like blog about what you're interested in, what you're passionate about, and then do more of that and do less of the things that you don't want to do. Like that's my general life advice is do more of the things you want to do less of the things you don't want to do. If you're like, I want to help other people make design systems, I'm super passionate about design tokens or Netlify or 11D. Hi, Mike, once again, it's like you sort of just gravitate naturally just because those are the things that you're passionate about. There's not like, I feel like if we were to be honest, it's like, oh, like there's money to be made here and stuff like that. There's like a professional calculated kind of thing that happens there. But honestly, it's like, it really is that overlap of, oh, this is commercially viable, but this is what I'm interested in. Like, I like doing these things. Like we've already sort of talked about how it's like the volatiles versus the stables and sort of stuff like that. And it's like, we like coming in and sort of helping and doing these things, pointing people in the right direction and sort of like seeing ourselves out the door. There's other people that are like, I made a thing and I work on this thing and I want to be associated with this thing. And like, that's another form of fulfillment. So it's like, it really, the stupidly simple version of it is like, do more of what you want to do and less of what you don't. And the more you share here's what I'm passionate about and what I'm interested in, that kind of attracts people that if your gig or what you enjoy doing is something that you want to share with others and help people with, it should be kind of come hand in glove. So I don't know, Nathan, Dan, if like that sort of checks out with you, but it becomes like this gig becomes a natural extension of being interested in this stuff.
Oh, that's 100%, because as design systems have evolved over the last, 8 years now, 9 years, there's been a lot of sort of epochs or eras of things that have come and gone. And as I think about the things I'm thinking about today, or this month, or this past year, it's a narrow subset of those things. And I tried it on one project and learned things, and then tried it on another one. And then a third and fourth client are like, we're having this problem. And I say, is it sort of like this? And they say, yeah, that's it. And then you just keep evolving the particular thing you're interested in. 100%. That's a way to keep yourself energized too.
Yeah.
Cool. Let's dig in actually a little bit on that, Nathan. But obviously, design systems started 8-9 years ago, something like that. And you've been seeing a lot of those different design systems. But where do you see the evolution? What is different now that it used to be before? I don't know, where do you see it going also, maybe anything that you observed along the years?
I'll talk about just things that have me energized today that weren't things that energized me as much before. I think design tools like Figma are approximating code increasingly much to the point where you can actually, one, build really sophisticated things, two, share those sophisticated things and map those things to what developers are doing. And so that kind of connection makes me really excited. It gives me a lot of energy and makes me feel the potential of things. The other one is one that I really struggle with, because people in part hire me and my company to come in and help them make their system. But the challenge, really the value with, I've made a lot of systems. I'm kind of bored with making systems over and over again. Like I've done color tokens a lot. But on the other hand, so many companies, including ones I still consult with today, underinvest in how to enable other parts of their organization to use the system. Training, onboarding, adoption, support, and so on. And the connectedness you have with all the other users. And as a consultant, you don't get to do that as much because you're connected to the core team and you're trying to enable them to connect with their communities. But the big thing everybody continues to ask for is contributions. How does it fit? More people making more stuff that are going to go into this shared space. And so that problem in particular remains, in my opinion, pretty unsolved and ripe for further work that will create energy with us.
It's interesting because actually there was earlier a conversation, like a question, how do you all build engagement and relationship with the users other than the stakeholders? I think that's pretty much that idea, right? It's like, ultimately I'm guessing that the people that get in touch with you are the one passionate about design system, but how do you bring more people along in those companies is probably the challenging part in my mind.
Well, it's like relationship building, because I don't want to take over or be the face of the system. It needs to be those in-house design leads and other dev leads and others that connect really well with the community. And that's not everybody on the core team, but it's certainly members of the core team. You want them to be the face because that sustains the knowledge. And so how do you coach those people to connect while still forming some relationships yourself? But you're impermanent, you're temporary, you're going to be gone. And so that's not a place where, as a consultant, I can play as much as I wish I could, the servicing aspect of things.
Okay. Any other big trend that you saw then, Brad?
I've never been good at predictions, so I can only say like what draws my interest, right? Because I don't know if it's going this way or not. And I like to think of myself as like a skate to where the puck is going, as opposed to where it is. And I think the thing that design systems have always pointed to, which I think is why I'm interested in them so much, is it points to how we work. Because it is a tool, and that's underselling what a design system is. That's not all of it, but at some level, it is a tool. And using it a tool, it's different than using other tools. Like this particular tool, it's different than using Photoshop or Figma or VS Code, or like those are discipline-centric tools. A design system is not. And it's unusual for a lot of organizations. It's like developers can use, and designers and product folks and sometimes content folks and like other disciplines. And so to use it in the same way and to work the same way that we did before we had a multidisciplinary cross-disciplinary tool is weird. It's like, it's strange. And so I'm really interested in how, once we figure out because I think there's still some figuring out to do in our industry. Once we figure out that stuff, what's the next pass of it? The next pass of it is like, how does machine learning factor into how we work? How does artificial intelligence factor into how do voice only interfaces factor into how we work? How do teams work together? You know, how can we work if we can just speak at a whiteboard and it assembles a bunch of things? Like, we've seen small glimpses of people doing experiments about that, but I'm like, I think people are poking at how we work and saying, like, how we work hasn't changed in a long time, but all of our tooling is changing. All of the products that we're making are changing. Who use them change. Like, we now have things on our planet that billions of people use, digital things. And that's new in our history. So how we work on those things has to be different, right? So I think design systems start to poke at that idea, but we haven't scratched the surface of it yet, although people are experimenting with it and starting to get to. So I think there's a lot to do there. And once we get past like component APIs, you know, and like naming conventions, like we'll get there, but there's some settling that needs to be done first, you know, in order to get there.
Yeah, you took the words out of my mouth, which was design systems on the blockchain is my prediction.
So that's your next book, right?
That's my Design Systems on the Blockchain by Brad Frost. But I think you're touching on something really big, and Nathan, you were talking about it as well. It's like, for me, it's like this stuff, the like low level stuff, is going to increasingly be a commodity, and increasingly it's like, and what I want what's happening with like HTML tabs right now, for instance, which is to say, it's just like, okay, the stuff that we do again and again and again and again and again and across different projects is like, oh, you need to make tabs and accordions and date pickers and whatever. It's like, once we just like sort of push that stuff down to like the HTML level or whatever, it's like, let's just like be done with that stuff and figure out how to style. That's not the exciting stuff. That's not like energizing. That's like, those are chores. It's like, who really cares like what these things do? But that's like the present state of design systems. It's like making that stuff happen. It's like, what does our date picker look like and how does it function? And it's like, God, what a waste of energy. And it's like, what's so exciting about design systems, and our colleague Josh Clark talks about this, is like, design systems solve the boring stuff so that like people could do more exciting things, right? So it's like, you know, that the hope is behind this concept of design systems. It's like, here's these solved problems. You don't have to think about them. You just plug them in. And what that means is that you're now free. You're now free to focus on like new and exciting things rather than drawing the same damn rectangle for the 17th time. It's like, let's just like stop that. So it's like, I hope that we get to a point where it's just like that basic component library, and like we could have, this is a big ball of wax that I won't get totally into, but it's like the material designs of the world and like the bootstraps of the world. It's like, if we are able to just kind of like solve those at like a deeper level, which is to say, it's like some of these things, especially around accessibility or whatever, is like not things that we have to ponder and tackle again and again and again and again. What can we do with our time and our energy and our talent? And I welcome that future. We still have a ways to go, as Dan was saying, but it's get to the like the novel problems, get to the interesting problems rather than, yeah, what does our card look like? This is from someone who spends half of his day going, what does this card look like? But we know we're on to something bigger. Like we know that it's like, this is like a step along the way to sort of like more interesting things. And it's like, it's interesting to be like sort of interested in that. Let's like get this thing to a solved problem state. You know what I mean? And it's like, I think that's like the attitude of a design system consultant is like, let's just like get this behind us. So we can do fun things together.
See, I'm brought back to making yourself obsolete, because we're talking about consultants and we're talking about the experience of being a consultant, and what we consult on in 5 years, 7 years, 10 years might all be obsolete, or a lot of it might be automated. It might be so integrated into tools that are all called Google material for Figma on React. Oh my God, is that our future? But like, maybe it is. But if it is, then how are we going to evolve what we're experts at so that we're still needed, so that we're still valuable, and we're still solving problems?
Yeah.
I
sure hope that the date picker problem is solved 5 years from now.
No way. Not a chance.
I have a feeling that tooling will keep evolving, but ultimately there's only human people that can solve human people problems. So to me, like probably most of the consultancy that's still going to be relevant is how do you make sure that people are able to work together, right?
Yeah.
So
that's right.
And that's part of the design system world too, right? It's like, yeah, your tooling is probably
important. Yeah, it's the more important part.
Okay, cool. Well, we've been chatting for over an hour, and it's been great. I don't know if you guys want to, maybe it's time to wrap it up a little bit, but honestly, I feel like we could have continued, and I would be like so interested in hearing horror stories and stuff like that. So maybe we'll have to do like a special Halloween or something like that. Thank you very much for joining us today. Before we actually stop, is there anything that I don't know if you have like a shameless plug or something that you want to talk about, things that you think people should know of before we stop?
Hire a design system consultant.
Obviously, hire you all as a package, and then what?
I can plug all of you because I was a singleton in my last role, and I made it through
t-shirt of that.
because of all of you. I read Nathan's Medium posts. Like that's what kept me. I needed a cameo of to like tell my boss that I was correct. I really needed that. But just having all of your content that you put out into the world for free outside of your consulting, that's great for the singletons or for the small teams that aren't able to hire a consultancy. So thank you for putting that content out for us.
Yeah,
Thank
definitely.
You. That's very kind.
Well, thank you very much again, Nathan, Dan, Brad, and Katie. It's been really fun. Looking forward to maybe have you another time. Once you're in the Design System Social Club, you'll always be. So feel free to join in every time you feel like it. Thank you, everybody. See you next time, and until then, stay fresh, cheese bags.